And today when I sit, I don't know whether humans made me or I've made human, because literally I feel humans made me. I'm a complex human being. I deliver two work profiles which are extremely opposite of each other. A conversation with where business is involved, I'm a shark. Then nothing comes in my way. When I'm writing poetry, I'm not selling. Luckily, because of human, there's bread on the table, so there's no urgency to sell. You don't want to be ignored. Liking, disliking, both I like. Blood, for that matter. Right? Blood is a series, is an intellectual property of the brand, which we launched in December 22.
Sure.
The first version of Blood is grotesque, and you would not want to invest in it. It's a white t-shirt and a white shirt with, it looks real blood. It's not made for sales. It's made as a proof of concept that, okay, this is something which could spark a conversation, and this is the most authentic side of it. Do not show the nipple, do not show this. Now, back in the day, when somebody would design a campaign, that's not the first thing that comes to your mind. You invest. You don't look at a person before investing. You invest because you have abundance. Like, probably world will see the first, entrepreneurial poet.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your support on Blessing and Breaking in 2023. You guys have been amazing with all your comments, all your feedback on the podcast. And what I need from you now, the only thing I'll ever ask of you, the one big favor, is to follow us and subscribe to us wherever you're watching it. This is the only way I'll be able to grow this podcast, to call more important guests, to help share better learnings with you so you're healthier, happier, less lonely, are able to live your best life. Your support means everything to me. Thank you so much. Hasn't even started yet. But is it like the silence before the storm? Should I prepare with that?
No. It's a pleasure to be in your company, and I'll always look forward to any conversation in life. That's the only way you learn and grow.
No, I'm looking forward to our chat today. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
Would you want to tell us and the audience, I know, of course, who you are, but would you want to tell our audience who's Pranav Kirti Mishra? What do you do?
Well, I write poetry. I run a 10-year-old brand which is called Human. Uh, and I'm from Lucknow. I'm not as young as I look.
How young are you?
I was joking. I'm 39 years old, which is something somehow I'm very mindful of. So I keep bringing that up as part of my identity. See, I didn't even prepare it. It just came out as the first this thing. I'm aware of my age and how I'm aging.
I think it's a very crucial number. It's having lived a life of in your 30s of experiences and wisdom, and now maybe what preparing for 40, what 40 might look like, 40s might look like. No?
Yeah, there's I took the pause because there's this poem that I had written uh, quite recently, and उसमें एक लाइन थी कि uh, और उम्र के जिस पड़ाव में मैं इस वक्त खड़ा हूँ, ये भी कह सकता हूँ कि अब जितनी बढ़ेगी उतनी बचेगी नहीं. So to that effect, I'm more mindful because it's not how much I've lived, it's also how much is left. So
Starting our introduction with paradox. I already see, and I've never had never ever had an introduction which had poetry in it. So thank you so much for setting the benchmark a little higher. No, right. So, no, thank you for that. And I like that you introduce yourself as a poet first and then a designer. But continuing down that thought, Pranav, you're both a writer. Can I call you a writer or a poet rather? You're okay with both. So you are a writer and a designer, right? And you live those lives parallelly. Very different lives. Tell us a little about that.
Very recently also I've become comfortable, calling myself a poet, because all my life I've kind of shied away from, and I don't know whether the work that I do with respect to writing qualifies as poetry or not, which is where the hesitation was for me.
That is exactly why I asked you, because of course when I was researching about you, I did find in one of your experts of your interview said that I'm not sure if I want to call myself a poet. That's why I called you a poet. You'll be right.
Yeah. But very recently, because you self-evaluate and you're always kind of asking questions to yourself and observing things around you. I think the point of view is something that I'm very confident of that it has is in sync with poetry. And, the way I look at things is where I come from. I don't need to write poetry for my point of view to be poetic from that lens. So Sure. Now coming back to running, say, human or designing at human and writing poetry, again, it's a very recent observation that they're not so different from each other that they might seem like to an outsider. Yes, their language and their palette is very different from each other. But somewhere, somewhere there is a sync of storytelling. There is somewhere, um, it's pretty, you know, to that effect, it has a common ground. It's not so different from each other. You just explained me that how it, even if it might seem a little or starkly different to what you continuously pivot between of being a poet and a designer, it is really not for you, right? Right. So I was saying that how is a so I that's why I took a minute. I was like, but uh, as a consumer of both your poetry and now your poetry and earlier of your collections, when you started 10 years back, because this is how long your brand has been now there in this space, I felt that when you were producing collections then, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I felt that diversity was because a big conversation for you because you didn't belong to the industry. And anybody who doesn't belong to the industry, for them, it's a love and hate relationship where you love the creation, the art, so you want to do it, but you hate there's certain aspects about the industry, right? So you definitely want to stand out, you want to make a noise, right, among the big shots. So you did that, but you were, I felt, was a little ahead of time in terms of the representation you wanted to bring forth. Hence, a little out of place. That's how I saw you at the beginning stage of it. But I think with population, the composition of the population becoming younger, and digitalization really coming in, and the evolution of social media, and now we're living in a platform world, I think that your brand got its recognition, right? And then, of course, you are also continuously evolving as you and Sharma who built this brand together. Um, I like your brand still stands very like making noise, and these are very sharp edge designs, and like very cutthroat personality types, catering to all personalities. But your poetry is like, and it's more intimate, it's softer. It's in your poetry you have your muses as women and broken memories, broken moments. So I feel that I when I see you as Pranav Mishra, the poet, Mishra, which is your pen name, right? And when I see you as a designer, I see it as different. Like I see those things very differently. I think the only difference between both the aspects is that when I'm when I'm writing poetry, I'm not selling. Uh, that's the only difference. Whenever there is an act of selling involved, you have to take the environment into account. You have to be mindful of your audience, um, which is not the case with poetry. It's literally my story. And luckily, because of human, there's bread on the table, so there's no urgency to sell, or be relevant or be understood. Uh, it's just, you know, um, I would say, hunger to deliver. On a technical and a craft level, each time you do that and somebody you find a connect with your audience, you feel delighted because that's just the way artists function. You don't want to be ignored. Liking, disliking, both I like. If somebody's completely, you know, um, doesn't agree with my point of view and is vocal about it, I love that. I'm all up for even if there is a little bit of troll involved, I'm the least bothered. But if there's nothing involved, then it bothers me. Don't like to be in a room and there's no wind. It's just so very dull. You interacting with your audience as well, and
Just before we started shooting, I was telling you that I was prepared to be uncomfortable when I'd come for your narration, but I wasn't. But because it was the first time I was listening as a audience to poetry, I don't even know how to say, like, well, if I speak, like, will you get distracted? Yeah. Like, if I say who, like, is it even appropriate to do who in a poetry narration? So I always encourage the audiences whenever I'm reading, because uh, that's the difference. And I think because it's not so normal uh, to be in a room and listen to poetry. Um, it's not theater. I'm not acting. So I'm not playing any role. It's like literally somebody who is okay, you know, compiling everything that they've understood in their life from their lens, right, into few sentences, right, and communicating that. The more you engage, the more fruitful it becomes, and the more I would say exciting it becomes, even to the poet himself, because it's like a dialogue. So that's why, like, I always encourage, if you don't like it, even that's acceptable. I Yeah. think solitude can also be practiced with a room people, metaphorically, not physically. It's like, and this is something that I'm understanding with age, with time, where at some point I was very, I would have to cut off from my life, uh, to actually listen to myself, which for a creative person is very counterproductive. It's like for poetry to sort of function. Sure. It's like you're at the hands and the mercy of situations in your life, and you cannot create. And many artists struggle with that. And I think most of my, heroes, sculptors, poets, the more I've dived deeper into their work, say Raina Maria Rilke's or August Rodin's, it's almost like, so Rilke also went with the same kind of curiosity to Rodin, who was a sculptor. That how do I create poetry every single day of my life? It's impossible, because my life is not that exciting every single day, and poetry needs that spark. Um, and the only process is that it obviously requires a lot of discipline, because idea will come one day, and then you have to go back to your table like a sculptor to keep hitting that hammer and keep polishing it. Like an actor, I observe, that's my analogy, that I observe when an actor has to perform the most delicate scenes, they don't really have to go through those experiences that very day for them to actually bring life to a character. They borrow certain instances and nuances from their life, from their experiences that might have happened, and they're able to deliver. So what they're doing is, craft is under their command. And that is something that I practice to keep my emotions and stories at my will and command. For me to, ask them to come and sit on my table when I want, because Yeah. For an authentic voice, the honesty of that voice is also important. You can't fake it. So I think that is what requires a lot of, I would say, effort. And yes, solitude is must. But as I said, as I started this dialogue, that I'm learning how to practice solitude even when with people and scenarios in my life. Is the most challenging thing. Sure. But that's where my effort goes, to find that balance. Um, Far away from it, but definitely I'm putting effort there. Yes, I'm reading this book. I'm forgetting the name, because I have a problem. I can't read one book at a time. I read 5 books at a time, so I'm just forgetting the name. But um, I this year I started labeling an emotion, and I think it was very important for me to label that emotion. It's called resistance. Because that when you want to go to the gym, when you want to sit down and write, when you want to get out of your comfort or on a chilly morning in Delhi, you don't do that because it's continuously a voice like sleep extra. Don't go to gym. You had a long day today, right? Or it's okay, you can write tomorrow, right? What is that voice called? It's called resistance. It resists you to be your best version every day, every moment. So I labeled it, and labeling it um, helped me a lot because now I know what it is. So earlier, I wouldn't understand this. I was like, okay, let's not go. I wouldn't even know it's a voice, right? Yeah. So that helped. That intrigued me to label other emotions in my life, right? So that's what I did. I labeled other emotions in my life. And I think labeling those emotions help you to kind of understand yourself better and what your being is and what your being is not being allowed to be in your best capacity. So something what you said about that, poetry needs that spark and every day you need to sit down and write it. And every day is not as eventful as you would want to hear from a poetry. So Shankar Ehsaan Loy said something on those lines where he said that, every day I'm worried that music will not come to me again. Like I would not be able to create the kind of work I have created, and one day music will just leave me. I've created enough music, and there's only so much music you can produce, right? There's only so many sounds in the universe, but that's not true, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, how I challenge resistance, right? He calls it something else. Everybody has their different labeling, so he calls it something else. Like how I challenge it is showing up. Of course, you just show up. It's like every day I just sit down. He has a time from 10 a.m. let's say to 1 p.m. He's like every day I'll just sit down and I'll just write. And I think that's just my takeaway from your narration on this would be to just keep doing what you do every day. Right?
Yeah, you have to show up.
Yeah.
You have to show up. I think the act of creation is also pretty, I would say, what's that word? It's pretty romanticized. It requires a lot of work, constant, needs a lot of discipline. Um, it's not so nomadic as we think it is. And, it's the act of creation is also work at the end of the day. Every day can't be exciting, but for all those
I was
days,
listening to this
whatever
podcast
emotions
this
that are
morning.
coming.
I have a ritual. I listen to podcasts while brushing. So, like, I was listening to it, and it said that, why is it easy to? I've listened to this Buddhist lessons. So it's a Buddhist lesson in a podcast form. So it's like, why is it easy to be angry? Why is it easy to be a procrastinator? And vice versa. Why is it difficult to be calm? Why is it difficult to be on showing up? Why is it easy? Is because we have done it so much. We have done it over the years. That's a natural reflex of reaction chain. It's reaction, not response, right?
Yeah.
So it's like how you can challenge it by doing exactly by what you've achieved master and expertise in this consistency. Consistency is showing up. And that means doing the things when you don't like it either. Yeah. Right? Like just keep doing what you want to do. Have clear goals because vague goals like result into vague results, right? So I think that's what anybody listening in can make out of this situation. Yeah. I want to give this a better structure to our conversation. Um, Human has been there for 10 plus years, right? I genuinely love humans' creations. I genuinely think it's a different brand. It has a voice other than people who want to have a voice. Like I think it has. And I think I have seen your brand evolve and I think it's still evolving. And I think it's a reflection of the creator's evolution as well. Your brand is as evolved or as good as how your own personal journey continues to be, which is what is reflective in human. Has it reached its highest pinnacle? I don't know. You will answer it. I think once you will, it will. If there is a highest platform to reach at. But when I was researching a little bit about you, read it in an interview. I think for Platform Magazine, you had mentioned that human now is more fraternity driven than your own brand's perception, which is almost like democratizing the brand, right? Was it intentional, Pranav? A. B. What would your advice be to a young entrepreneur, design student, fashion designer entering into the space in a digital space today to think of before starting a brand?
The first thing that comes to my head every time, we have a dialogue on these lines. Yeah. I was last one to give advice, so, not an advice,
from your
but
experience.
yes, but I would say remaining authentic is the only way for you to do concrete work in whatever field that would be. If you're not authentic, then I feel the longevity of your work will reduce. The impact of your work is going to
Sure.
reduce. And you yourself will not find it inspiring enough for you to continue. Because at the end of the day, till your last breath, Your authenticity is the only thing that is always going to be there. Whatever, form of way, whether it's in sync with society's narrative or not, is beyond, it's beyond that. Whatever who you are, you're only going to make noise if you deliver on that front and you choose to speak that language. Um, Most of the times we get carried away because, see, influence is two-sided. Um, and that especially goes on to younger minds and younger people who have age to their advantage, is that either you are going to influence your environment or it's going to happen the other way. Sure. I would say, recommend for you to be in charge of that, exchange. Um, for that, obviously, you also have to be continuously mindful of, your learning curve and where you are headed and things like that. But that's one thing to be always keeping in mind. So was it intentional for you, the democratizing of the brand? It has society in its dialogue. Everything that human is today is not entirely that I've created, because we started human in 2012. I've gotten the opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the most creative minds, intelligent minds, and learned so much. And so has human also gotten the opportunity to work with such creative people. Um, and somewhere their energy, has rubbed off on human and on me personally. Sure. And today, when I said, I don't know whether humans made me or I've made human, because literally I feel humans made me. And I'm only talking about evolution part of it. Because as you've observed, humans not just a label, human is also, the nomenclature is because I'm taking humanity into account. Everything that we are, everything that we represent. Scale as a conversation becomes a very big challenge. Yeah. And then when other people get involved, like investors, yeah, in your case, or in my case, like senior leadership, it it becomes a double-edged sword. No, that's why, I'm a complex human being. I deliver two work profiles which are extremely opposite of, yeah, each other. If I were to When have you say two work profiles, you mean a poet and a different. Yeah, like if I were to have a conversation with where business is involved, I'm a shark. So then nothing comes in my way. Fair. Right now we are trying to dig into emotional aspect of me. Fair. So if you're getting into my intellect and my, EQs and IQs, then I need to dig in. I need to go inside. That's where I practice solitude, because at the end of the day, I will not hear myself. So upar se to I will touch. Like how in business conversations, I know how to make a sales pitch. Nothing will come in the way, because वो phone पे हूँ, and we live in Delhi. I'll nothing can come in the process. Amazing. But when I'm say, my pace will be different, my body language will be different. I'm a different person altogether. Uh, you know, uh, I will not be talking in this space because I don't have that time. There's an urgency to win, so I'm a different person altogether. My eyes will sparkle in a different way. But when it comes to poetry, or when it comes to my, who I am as a person, then I mean, I also need to dig in, yeah, to find that, because on a day-to-day basis, I don't have time to find that. This was not supposed to be there in the whatever, but I think now it is, because they're anyway rolling. But I think it's amazing that it is, and then I'm fascinated by what you've just told me. I mean, I personally haven't seen somebody pivot into two spaces of creation only. Like this is poetry for you. Not for you is not a personal space. You're not like a lover or a friend or a son in that space. You're a creator again, just like how you're with human. And the personality shift is intense. It's fascinating for me. Yeah, so sometimes when I'm having, say, collaborations with people and things like that, and I'm cutting deals, uh, you know, I'm a different person. So, but the moment I have to shift gear, ki now I have to, say, direct a campaign. So then I do not get involved in those conversations, because I will not do justice to this. Then this is beyond anything to do with sales. This is beyond anything to do with numbers. This is, if I have to deliver, say, if I have to create a campaign, I don't care about who's going to like or not, because I need to deliver my most authentic. Do you self. 100% mean it? Yeah, I need to deliver on who I am, because otherwise you will not find a human is different, or no, on the fact that you don't care anybody likes it or not. Yeah, when I'm creating, yeah, definitely. Say when I'm creating something at the core level, like for example, if even if you pick up works, blood for that matter, right? Blood is a series, is an intellectual property of the brand, which we launched in December 22.
Sure.
The first version of Blood is grotesque, and you would not want to invest in it. It's a white T-shirt and a white shirt with it looks real blood. It's not made for sales. It's made as a proof of concept that okay, this is something which could spark a conversation, and this is the most authentic side of me. Maybe I don't even know how it
You
came
want to tell
from.
me a little bit about Blood?
Yeah, like I don't even know how it came from. I was just drawn to that texture. I was just drawn to plasma because I saw my father die 2 3 years ago, and the more I think about it, I feel like maybe it could be that, or maybe it could be the societal violence that I'm surrounded by constantly. But it's not like creative process is not so. It's beyond rules and regulations कि मैं मैप लेकर के नहीं बैठा हूँ ग्रिड प्लान करके कि ये मुझे आज तितली से इंस्पायर होके बनाना है. This conversation could inspire me to make something out of my life. For that, again, going back, you need solitude and you need to be authentic. But now, when we took that to the market, is when I'm taking the society into consideration. So you see Blood range, pink Blood selling the most. We sold thousands of copies. When I went to market, I launched 10 colors. Because I want market to tell me what they like. And they picked up, lilac, they picked up pink, they picked up black, one of the most highest selling. I mean, when I'm designing Blood, I'm not thinking of black. I'm thinking the rawest form of something that comes to my head. Same goes with the visual campaign. Like when I'm designing a campaign, I don't care whether Instagram allows me to put something because my creative process is not that. And recently I was having this conversation with my team also. Like one of the campaigns that we recently did, pheromones, it drew a lot of attention and things like that. And and my team got nervous because so many followers instantly left, because you see it's a provocative imagery. It comes from a place which is not easily digestible if not fully, if you don't expose yourself to literature, art, if you're not going out of your comfort zone. And I loved it. So I told my team, I was like, very, as a sense of humor, I said the audience is just filtering out. But what I meant was that I was happy that it provoked somebody to take an action. If you're not taking an action, my work is dull. At the end of the day, and it'll find its audience. How we operate as creative forces currently is taken into account rules and regulations made by a certain society. Now, Instagram, Facebook is also a society. It's a community that has been built. It has community guidelines. Do not show the nipple, do not show this. Now, back in the day, when somebody would design a campaign, that's not the first thing that comes to your mind. Because that's literally where you want society to feel liberated. You want somebody in marginalized section of a room to find their voice through your work. For that, you need to give them your voice.
Good there are community guidelines. I'll tell you why. Not because it's asking you, it's telling you to make content as per their guidelines, but because for creators to understand that Instagram is not the only platform where your work should be out. That you do not create work for Instagram. Like you said, said that algorithm cannot decide what I want to create, right? So the question I asked you was that if it was intentional, which you've answered that it has been a mix, like it wasn't intentional to kind of have it fit in a creative one, but it's been a journey of 10 plus years and it happened to be so. And you saw that it was only benefiting the brand and your own evolution and you allowed it, right?
It's grown because of the community. Everything that human is because of the community. Yeah, everything that human does is a reflection to its society.
Right.
So, if you like it,
right,
then you're just seeing yourself.
Right.
Because we are not tone deaf as people or as a company. When we put things out there, we don't put things out there for the sake of it, because we do a lot of thinking before we put any of our work out there.
Sure.
There's constant dialogue, there's constant conversation around like our creative process. When people come and say, when we'll collaborate with, say, someone, and show the design. We're not the kind of design company who makes croquis and sketches and show it to you. It's everything is conversational. Everything has been talked about. Everything is in theory. Everything is a kind of literature. That's where I say it's poetry is in it. Earlier, when Shama and I used to work on it collectively, she would literally write down things in poems. She's a great writer in English. That's our creative process. So, you know, that's what I feel shaped us, made us grow. Right. Community has been the focal point of a human doing what it is doing today. It's not somewhere there is I think community is only I feel privileged that I have a certain sense of um, you know I get to lead the brand. But it's of everybody's. I see, when I was a child, I did not dream of becoming a businessman. That was not my dream. um, I've I've earned skill sets now to be able to do that. Um, to be able to buy and sell profitably. That's something that I've learned. Keyword being profitable. Our same goes with design. I did not dream of becoming a designer. None of my family members are designers. I'm not materialistic by nature. You go to my house, I'm the most sustainable, quote unquote, person to be found. Most of the things in my wardrobe are of people who've come into my life. If I'm traveling somewhere and someone, even a stranger, and I have many stories like that, if say they like my something that I'm wearing, I will take that off and give it to them, because no matter how expensive it is, it's that's not something that I'm excited by. Yes, I appreciate good taste and appreciate good design, but I'm not a hoarder or a collector uh, in any case. Sure. That was never the dream. So what was the dream? You go down to your basics. The dream was to be able to create stories or tell stories, to be curious about society, to be curious about people. I find my father, when I was young, the only thing that I observed in his entire life, he always had people around him. um, and he would say the silliest of jokes, and everybody would laugh, and everybody would just like, he was like a magnet. He was a poet himself. So, and I was just drawn to, like, I was just so charmed by his presence. And for me, he was almost like God. uh, just the beauty that he delivered by his personality. And that's something that I closely observed when he died in 2018, because people with his community, his society, people came from such far lengths to just come there. And the kind of dialogues that they were having is how much of a magnetic pull he was, how much of the connect that he did, how he was as a person. They had no this thing to do with what he did, because everything that he did earned for his livelihood was for his children, for his family. That's literally a small circle that you contribute to. So everything that I buy, collect, is for me. It doesn't have anything to do with society, and I'm not wired that way. So hearing people having that love for your father defined your early perspective of how you want to live your life? No, a lot shifted after his departure since 2018. A lot in my design process, a lot in my creative process, a lot psychologically and emotionally as well. I got to understand love at much deeper, sense of the word. Uh, yeah, the most important thing that I would say observed was that everything in this life is temporary. Yeah. And I just felt so empowered and beautiful about it. Not even for a day, my father's departure made me feel uh, slightest bit alone. It almost like it's almost like it, you know, made me understand the moment a child's father is such a concrete. I mean, at least to my life, is such a concrete roof on your head. Only when it is, in my case, happened, when it's removed, you see how big the sky is. A lot many people would feel otherwise. I mean, I felt like that. Some people would be like, oh my God, there's going to be rain. What am I going to do? My foundation, my father made such a strong foundation that when he was nowhere there, when that chat was removed, I saw, my God, there's such a beautiful, sky above me. Yeah, so that's why I'm so grateful for what he did in my early days. And that's why instantly I learned that it's so temporary. All the things that we collect, all the emotions, all the love that we try to hold on to, or all the boundaries and things they make. One of my other favorite lines from one of my favorite poets, Raina Maria Rilke, uh, because I just said something to that effect, is, aren't lovers always arriving at each other's boundaries, although they promise vastness hunting home? So when you say, and let that sit in for a while, anything to you love, you automatically, there is a sense of ownership that comes with it. That I love this house, I love this person, I love this car. It's almost like you were so scared for it to do anything or without your involvement, or go anywhere without your say. And that is constantly making a boundary around it. What which should it rather be? You just invest. We are so mindful when it comes to investing in mutual funds, but we are so mindless when it comes to investing in relations. We always look for immediate returns. We don't do that when we're investing in properties and stocks and mutual funds. We have the patience to wait for 30 years, for God knows what, you won't even last. But we don't invest in relationships for that long, because you just want, oh, I called her, why didn't she call back? But human connections are different than, say, mutual bonds. No, it's everything is same. An investment is only going to give best results when they're tail ended. The sooner you want results, the more short change you're going to get. Whether life, mutual fund, love, whatever you say, marriage, What should be a timeline for investment? Say when you know that, okay, invest in another person. You invest. I mean, you don't look at a person before investing. You invest because you have abundance. And if there's a fund that is very exciting, you're not going to invest just because it's exciting. You'll only invest when you have something. Right? So if you do not have anything, you're only going to waste time. So love, especially, is within you. It's supposed to be invested. It's not something that you receive. You receive, it's like a mirror. You receive only when you have something to give. It might be that person, it might be another, it might be, it might be this decade, it might be another, but everything that you invest is what you get in life. So if you invest loyalty, you're going to get loyalty. If you invest, I would say, hard work and dedication towards your, it might take time. Human didn't happen in a day. There are many brands which were launched around that time, and many brands have shut. New brands have come and new brands have shut. But because that's happening, there was no urgency for me to get results. There was no urgency for me to change my narrative just because I want to, be just because I want to exist. Sure. I want to do what I came here to do. Sure. Uh, be a little mindful about it, be a little practical about it, but authentically invest. Yeah. I agree with the idea of not making it transactional. In terms of, I mean, you don't plan love like that. So and that when I say love, it's a broader theme for me. I do not just mean romantically. I mean love in any situation, with any relationship you have in your life. But I do want to focus on the fact that it shouldn't be like a, because this conversation can be understood in a lot of different ways by people, right? Like, while I definitely support the idea of unconditional love, and that just means without expectations. And without expectation only means to just not prep for disappointment, right? We only are disappointed because we create unrealistic expectations, unbound expectations. But at the same time, I don't want to give somebody a message that you should be stuck in a place where it's been long, like there's no limit, and you just like you're not in a toxic setup, and there is an option to be out, but I don't want you to also think that. So no, I see those are two very different things. Agree, but I feel that what we're talking about can be perceived by people वो trying to उसके भी become context में मैंने एक बार एक I'm writing a book, उसमें एक छोटा सा, with respect to something else, there's a line that हो सकता है मेरी बात तुम तक वक्त से पहले पहुंच जाए, तुम्हारी फसल तैयार ना और बारिश हो जाए, ये ठीक वैसा होगा. So I'm not talking about this from theory. I'm talking about this after having lived experiences and lost a lot in life.
Of course.
And this is a result of that. Today, what I am or what I believe in or what,
Yeah.
I represent keeps my life in check. I'm not the one who's shaking. I'm not the one whose heart is at unrest when I'm going to bed. There is something that I have practiced or probably by God's grace learned with time.
Yeah.
Which is again my mindfulness of how temporary everything is, that I invest more.
Right.
I'm far more present than I
Right.
ever was, and maybe that is where I found that stability. People usually say that people usually are running after happiness. They're always chasing happiness, and happiness is like bubbles in the water. uh, it is going to it is going to, it's like a sugar rush. It's going to I would say evaporate or disappear. What you're going to be left with is again a sinking feeling after that. It's like the coffee rush. One doesn't chase stability, because stability is something that keeps your emotions, mental, I would say, uh, uh, you- scale into check. Whose heart is at unrest when I'm from that point of view. For your own, we're in so urgency to reply it to somebody, something not having worked our way. But you don't realize that patience is such an important tool to practice. Even when it comes to relationship, because someone said something or because someone did something, I have to now give it back. Human beings are not dumb. Everyone's intelligent. When you commit something which is inappropriate, or you should not have, you are always aware of it. What we eventually do is we're in so urgency to tell that you're wrong. There's such an urgency to just give it back, that we act under emotional influence.
Right.
And that is where you add a layer of guilt, because whenever you're acting under an emotional influence, your steps are not, I would say, in its whole mindfulness. And that is where you're shaken. You never are shaken by an external force. You are only and only underbalanced or disbalanced within your heart when you do something, your action. And that's what I meant by investing. So if you're, say, for example, you're in a toxic setup in life, you don't have to be that person. You have to forgive for your emotional quotient to be at peace, for you to be able to go to bed at night. Because just because somebody slapped you, you don't have to slap them back.
No, very interestingly folded. We folded this entire bit. Um, Forgiveness, I believe, before we even get into the entire ambit of forgiving someone, taking them there, moving on, I think forgiving yourself is the first conversation. Forgiveness doesn't liberates the other person. It liberates the forgiving. I think that's where I think all of that. The only reason I was kind of focusing on that is because um, I think what we're talking is at a very elevated sense of you've lived your life for X many years. You've lived those experiences. You're speaking out of experiences, right? As we all do. I just want to be a little careful of maybe the younger generation listening in, but I can really get an understanding of what we are discussing here. And thank you so much for highlighting it.
And it's so important to fall down.
Yeah.
So if younger minds are listening to this, it is not going to happen before time, because again, it's not going to be authentic. So you're lucky if you get to experience that life. You're lucky if you get to fall down 20 times. Because in the truest sense, what I'm saying, you're only going to understand that then. And I'm also not an entirely evolved human being. Somebody who was very receptive of their environment in their 60s would have so much to sort of give to me.
Right.
I can only understand it then in theory and try to practice.
Right.
But the best results or the best learnings are from your own mistakes.
Right.
So that whole fear of this is going to damage me, maybe the damage is important at some level. That because that damage is going to build your personality.
Right.
Which way of I would say constructive or destructive, which way of the road that's going to go is totally based on your upbringing and your value systems. Yeah. So no, 100%, and that is why the name of my podcast is Blessing in Breaking. And I remember when I met you at your terrace, and this is what I told you, that the reason I named this podcast this is that when the shit hits the ceiling, when you reach the bottom of the pit, the only way is up, right? And when you're at the bottom of the pit, there are two ways it can go, right? Either you really want to climb up and you want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, or you have given up, like this is it. And in life, how does that happen? When something very terrible happens to you, a breakup, you lost a job, business didn't work out, your partner left you, health suffering, somebody passed away. These are the human experiences which bring immense pain and suffering to us. Suffering is anyway we cause out of it. There are two ways we go about it. We rise from the ashes, or we kind of go other ways, which is getting distracted, sex, drugs, giving up on life, sleeping, becoming a couch potato, whatnot, right? That's what the intention with this podcast is. यार बस सोच करके देखो कितना भी बड़ा ब्रेकअप हो कितना भी बड़ा ट्रेजेडी एक दिन मर ही जाना है उससे बड़ा कुछ नहीं होगा. Yeah. And this realization also just hit me this year. And everybody listening in, I wanna guys, I wanna take a minute to kind of talk about this death as a topic. I know I don't want to come across. We don't want to come across as somebody who's just like making you think about death, but what it signifies. As you rightly pointed out, the only reality, like when Yudhishthira was also asked at the doors of heaven, was that what is the most fascinating and bewildering thing about human beings? And this is what he said, and this was the winning answer for him, which is what led him to heaven. That we all, everyone, experience that around us from an early age as human beings in all shapes, but that's the only thing we don't prepare for. And for me, that's bewildering. And what I understand out of that is that when we say death, that only means impermanence. And when we think impermanence, like you've been kind of speaking on, it just makes that issue seem small. Like what I want people to understand is we don't want to give you a philosophical answer कि oh इसके बारे में सोचो सब कुछ नहीं है. But the thing is that when you know that the only reality is, which is true to from an Ambani to you and I, is reaching closer to death. Every day we are only reaching closer to our grave. So if that is the extreme reality of life, and at 39 for you and 31 for me, if I only have say on an average 30 to 35 years left, and 35 summers and 35 winters, and when you say it like that, 35 summers and 35 winters, how many of those summers and winters are you willing to spend in suffering? Pain happens to all of us, and that's the reason of evolution for human beings. We wouldn't evolve otherwise. That is why I wanted to do this podcast. I want one less lonely person out there to deal with everyday issues. Everyday issues will lose their gravity of, I don't know, of non permanence, of like insignificance for us. I think we all understand that life is only passing, and that's the idea. So I really want everybody to really take a second and really like understand we are not talking about that from like a philosophical point of view, but just like make it a practical reality, right? That's what it is. Continuing this chain of thought, Pranav, when I met you post your narration at KNM at your terrace, I told you that I've launched my podcast today. So you were very happy because you said that I'm happy it's happened today because today is Dreamers Day, which is what you were calling it in memory of your late father's birthday, correct? What is the significance of calling it that? I was very intrigued by it. Why do you call it Dreamers Day? Because I think 3 months before he passed away, I mean, we were great friends, so we were chatting, and late at night, and I was pulling his leg. So he had made a comment about something that I might have done or something, So I said, कि पापा हम क्या लेकर आए थे और क्या लेकर जाएंगे, which is kind of narrated in the Gita. Yeah. And he said something quite instantly. He's like, हम सपने लेकर आए थे पूरा करके जाएंगे. So probably one of the things that he said in life which made the most amount of impact into, into my mental space. So the Dreamer's Day came from there because I feel most of the times when I'm doing things in life, I'm living a dream that not even me, my father saw when he was young. Because most of his life went into making a family, giving us great education, upbringing. Most of his youth went into that. I'm quite selfish, so I'm single and I'm concentrated on my life and my development. which he didn't. So I have a collective responsibility of two people's dreams. So it's that it's that's why I called it Dreamers Day. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. The poetry, your poetry, I had the privilege of really listening it in person, and you really are a beautiful narrator. I really enjoyed myself for that an hour. So please accept my congratulations on that. The theme, the main autobiographical theme which run in your poetry is, like we were discussing earlier as well, is women and broken memories. How do you use them as a driving force in your narration? What's your process? I don't know if as a poet you would like to talk about your process. In my narration. Yeah. Like that dominates these two topics and themes dominate your narration. Am I wrong in assuming that? Yeah. So with respect to writing again, I would say intimacy is the umbrella theme, and under these two, these come. Yeah. That's why I said I don't know what I write is poetry or not, but Rilke once uh, said, and I do not know, quote unquote, the entire thing, but sure. Something in between to the effect that for one to be able to write poetry, one has to go through many nights of love where none of them were the same. One has to sit behind a dead body where there's a clock with a broken window and things like that. What he means is that everything that you're, experiencing is extremely important, and the diversity of it is even more important. Um, that is why when I look at the life that I've lived, I feel very grateful for the fact that um, I had the opportunity to go through these many experiences with respect to life, with respect to loss, with respect to love. There's so much. I'm extremely grateful for all the people that have come into my life for whatever time they would have, because at the end of the day, I'm a product of my family's upbringing and the women in my life and the books that I have read and the places that I have traveled. My opinions are literally based on my understanding of all these things together. Probably that's why you find that, I mean, that's what I've lived. So for example, I'm not writing about revolutions because I have not been a part of any. So I'm writing what I've lived. A poet can only write about what they have lived. So this is my life. What can I write about? I can't write about I would say poverty because I haven't lived. I'm an entrepreneur. So I keep joking about, I was like, probably world will see the first, entrepreneurial poet I've read, and the places that I have, you will see things from a, you completely get a different kind of work. We have this image of poets are, live a certain kind of life. I have not lived that. I've never been in a revolution. So how do I write about? I'm not a people's poet. I'm just a poet. So, and how we were talking about a little earlier with respect to loneliness or feeling sad or tragedy and things like that, I think it's very important. So you're lucky if you're feeling lonely, especially if you're creative. You're very, very lucky because everything that you're feeling when there's a creative person is the ingredient for you to put into your work. Yeah. What we do today, the environment is built in a manner that the first thing we feel, we go and speak about it on social media. To each their own. That's their process. But you are cutting your own feet by doing that because that's the most greatest amount of asset that you have, your feeling. There's a film that I recently watched, and there's a lot of dialogue happening around it, positive and negative, and I also have my point of view. And sometimes the system is designed in a way where it's like you mean yes, and I have an impulse to go and voice my opinion on it. But I'm a creative person. My opinions are very, very important to me. What I feel within is a big resource. It's not available for free. I will use it to create work which you can have an opinion on. That's the only thing that I've got. So that's something that's the most challenging thing for you to save. And life, if you surrender to life, will humble you down. It's a two-way stream. And I think that's what's happened to me. I was never the person to walk into the room full of hay to find a needle, because then I might just find the needle, but I'll miss out on everything else. I've always been of the opinion that just go and wander, and then let life slap you around. It has slapped me around multiple amount of times for me to realize that I'm actually a nobody. It's the impulse within me that makes me feel like, oh, I'm greater than everybody, which helps me create. But at the end of the day, I'm a mere human being, which is a very, very small. I'm nobody without my environment or without my people, or how much I have to be grateful for. So that realization also happens with time. Again, going back, it happens with losses. It happens with life. It happens being fallen so many times. When you start something, you're like, I'm the best. I'm not the best, but I need to feel the best. That's where arrogance comes from. And then if you need to be told you're not the best. Yes. So if I there's a tattoo that everybody has seen probably in my circle, which is 1.5 stars. This I got done the first day of registering my company, close to around 11 years ago. And kind of is a reminder. And I got it over here because I need to be reminded constantly that, you know uh, that this is the amount I know, this is the amount I have seen, and this is the amount I have learned. It's a because we are all operating from a bubble. So we feel we are know it all, and everybody has recognized a book. No, it's literally there's many people who even know you in this world. From that place, life and entrepreneurial journey. I'm lucky that I'm an entrepreneur. That was a very insightful. Thank you so much. It gives me so much food for thought. So, Pranav, the podcast is called Blessing and Breaking. And what I want to ask you is, so I'll tell you, we already discussed why I named it Blessing in Breaking, right? The idea was to find your blessing in your moment of breaking. When you have a breakdown, did you make a breakthrough? And if yes, what was your breakthrough, right? And I asked this question to all my guests on the show, and I'm going to direct this question to you as well. What was your biggest moment of your biggest breaking? And how did you navigate that? It's 2, 3 episodes. Uh, mm, but I think the significant amount of change in my thinking uh, came from, obviously my father had gone. So, that aspect had already happened. And around that time, you know, we were living pandemic, the pandemic had just happened. Sure. And I was going through not going through quite surprisingly, my partner at that time wanted to leave. Uh, and it all happened on, like as a sudden kind of a this thing. And somehow I literally said, you know, uh, because there's so much of love as a foundation, that love is giving. And I was like, you know, go and live your life, because at the end of the day, that's something that you want. And the moment I did that, uh, it was the easiest thing that I would say, to be able to do that, because there was a certain sense of I would have held the person accountable, just like how we usually do, and I have done that in the past as well, or people have done that to me. Uh, First time I realized the power of giving, at your lowest. So even at your lowest, and somebody asks you something, if you have that, you know, ingredient to provide, there is no greater feeling of empowerment than that. You know, there's nothing more empowering than that. So when I did that, it's like somebody asking you for money, and when you have very little, and even then when you decide, say, for to give, or ration, or anything for that matter, when you have limited resource of it and you give, you realize what a powerful person you are, because you could provide for something that somebody wanted in this world. And that's when I realized that love is within. you know um, and it makes the other person feel great, because it removes any kind of guilt from inside you, so you can sleep peacefully. Anyway, your partner is not there. Why go through the struggles of not sleeping peacefully? At least you did what you say promised in the first place, that unconditionally be available. That's what it is. So you feel great that okay, you understood love, and I think that was a big breakthrough for you. Yes, and my perception about everything, drastically changed. My notions about love, my notions about life. And the impermanence of things again. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it gives me a seasoned viewpoint on love again. My learning this year itself has just been this: come from love, not for love. It gives you joy, unfathomable joy. Like you rightly said, the person's anyway not there. Pain will happen. Why do you want the suffering? Yeah. Right? It's far more important for souls to be connected than bodies. I mean, bodies at the end of the day are far more temporary than souls. So imagine you're on your deathbed, uh, and all the people that you've shared life with, if they do not have, wonderful memories of how, you know, um, a great a company or how great a friend uh, you were, and what an impact you made to their lives, then it's such a disaster. I would not be want to. I would not want to be in that shoe. I want to be the person who, even if I meet somebody for say 5 minutes of my life, for me to have impression in their life, because that's the only thing that I can give. If I meet a stranger and say they would have, seen my work or heard my work and they approach me, uh, I operate from a place that I want them to feel loved. I want them to feel understood, and whatever they are feeling, because it's the purest form of emotion that they've come to me. There's a lot of love in exchange. So sometimes, and we attack in these instances, yeah, usually as human race, uh, where this is what's vulnerability is. Sometimes somebody would ask me, uh, just like simple things in life, we just might seem like agenda driven. I want to get coffee with you, or, yeah, things like that. Yeah. What you fail to see is the I would say the foundation of that. Maybe that's their way of articulating what they're feeling for you. uh, and I go for what the intent is rather than what the product is. I read this somewhere and it helped me through some of the darkest phases of my life. The pain doesn't go away, but it really helped me and gave me a lot of perspective in controlling my suffering. Suffering also doesn't go away. You work on it. It's an ever going process. आज ये है तो कल कुछ और. Suffering? Yeah. Pain. Suffering is what you create out of it, right? So I feel like it's something or the other. Today, if it's a heartbreak, tomorrow it will be something else. Like our body only supports us less and less as we grow older. So I read this that you want joy, that's there. You want suffering, that's also there. You choose. Yeah. Like you want your master to be joy or suffering, you choose. And it just stayed with me that both are there, right? Like, sometimes your mind, you self sabotage. Healing is hard, right? Self work is hard. It's the hardest thing on the planet to do. Healing. And healing, as it sounds rainbows and butterflies. It sounds like such a beautiful word. It's not. It's actually sitting in the mud. It's the hardest thing to do. It's it does isolate you. And when you're in that process, there's a moment the mind is tired, exhausted from continuously doing the self work and introspection. So you want to self sabotage. There's that very vulnerable, space you get into, and then you just want to self sabotage. You're so tempted to kind of do the wrong thing, which will reverse your self work. Like, what do you tell yourself then, right? Like, that's so important. So you have to just tell yourself then that listen, you're doing good. You want to continue doing that. You want to continue choosing joy. And now, what you're feeling right now is your limited beliefs, right? Your everything what you have been conditioned to think, and then you give in to that suffering. So I think that just really helped me a lot, and I think that's what has been a conversation, concurrent conversation today. Anything else, Pranav? You think that I could have asked you? I didn't. Anything else you want to share with somebody? Just to add to that, I feel, giving will only happen if you want to give. So, as you said, that, either you can suffer or you can turn the same instances into joy. Uh, People usually operate from the mindset, and I've also done that in the past. You're always, I would say, I want to do this, or I want to be here, or I want, I need this or I need that, and things like that. पूरी जिंदगी मांगने में ही चली जाती है। या तो आप घर वालों से मांग रहे होते हो, या अपने आप अपने पार्टनर से मांग रहे होते हो, या आप अपने ऑफिस से मांग रहे हो, whatever that might be, समाज से मांग रहे होते हो, जगह बनाने के लिए छोटी सी जमीन मांग रहे होते हो, तो मांगते ही रहते हो। मांग जितना भी मांग लो, आपको मांगने से सिर्फ और सिर्फ, चाहे वो प्यार हो और चाहे वो पैसा हो, सिर्फ चिल्लर में ही मिलता है, बिकॉज you've already become naked in front of the other person, so आपकी वैल्यू ऑलरेडी डिमिनिश हो चुकी होती है। और हर आदमी अपने में सक्षम है देने के लिए। मैं आपको अपना टाइम दे सकता हूँ, दैट्स अ बिग थिंग टू गिव। वी ऑल हैव स्कार्सिटी ऑफ टाइम, ओनली दिस मच। I can give you joy by just what I, how I want to lead a conversation. I can choose the same time to share jokes. I can choose the same time to complain about something that has happened. I can choose to be, utilize the same time by judging you. That narrative is totally in my command. And now, जब आप देना शुरू करते हो छोटी छोटी चीजें, आपको अबंडेंस की वैल्यू तब पता चलती है कि आपके पास कितना, जब आप लोगों को टाइम देना शुरू करते हो, जब आप चीजों को प्रोवाइड करना शुरू करते हो, तब आपको पता चलता है कि एक्चुअली आपके पास टाइम कम नहीं है। वन ऑफ माय greatest quotes that I've read is that a busy man is never able and the able man is never busy. हम कहते हैं हम बहुत बिजी, हमारे पास टाइम नहीं है। टाइम की कमी नहीं है, आप चूज क्या कर रहे हो, कहाँ इन्वेस्ट करने की, सेम चीज है। इमोशंस की कमी नहीं है, लव की कमी नहीं है। आप वो किस लेंस से देख रहे हो, कि आप या तो आप ऐसे देखो कि मेरी जिंदगी में लव नहीं है, मेरी जिंदगी में खुशी नहीं है। कौन है जो आपको दे रहा है? ऊपर वाले ने आपको बनाया है। एंड दिस वर्ल्ड इज सच एन अमेजिंग प्लेस, इफ यू लुक अराउंड, इज सच अ ब्यूटिफुल प्लेस। इज लाइक, रात होने का मतलब ये नहीं कि रोशनी खत्म हो गई, रोशनी तो है, हमारी इनएबिलिटी है कि हम उसको देख नहीं पा रहे हैं, वो हमेशा है। So it's from that lens कि either you will be a provider or you will be a receiver. I choose to be the provider. The only difference between the two extremities you have defined is perspective, right? Right? Day and night, suffering or joy, availability of a companion or not. Any whatever it is that you seek in life is what? It's just perspective, right? It's a shift of perspective which everybody needs. And that is why that perspective is not formed by theory. That is why I always, the only thing that I tell younger minds or people who have aged to that advantage, they might be 15, 16, 17, it's so important to make mistakes. It's so important to fall down. It's so important to be treated the way whoever's treated you, because that is the only ingredient and lesson, the more closest you can get to learning about life. That's the hard way I also learned it, that go through it, feel it. It will season you. This will be your blessing. You just don't know it yet. It's just that. Yeah, 100%. Right. Pranav, this has been wonderful. I think this has been the most engaging, philosophical, yet practical conversation I've had. Anything else you want to add on to? Anything else you want to talk about which you think we didn't talk about? Any other facet of your life you want to share? No, nothing like that comes to my mind. It's like, whenever, also, first of all, pleasure talking to you, and secondly, also, when this is the only window that I get when I'm having conversations, to actually, to actually dig in deeper, because at the end of the day, very recently I was realizing अपने को खुद को सुनने का ही मौका मिलता है, क्योंकि हम इतनी फास्ट पेस एनवायरनमेंट में हम जी रहे हैं कि यू आर डिलीवरिंग, राइट, बट उसका इम्पैक्ट अंदर क्या हुआ है वो आपको नहीं होता है। वो होने के लिए भी तीन ही चीजें हैं, either you meet new people, or you go to new places, or you read new books. So I'm glad that we had this conversation. And I think again you ended on an amazing note. I think थोड़ा
ठहराव में ही सीखने को मिलता है, एटलीस्ट फॉर मी व्हेन माय लाइफ वाज फास्ट पेस्ड। मुझे तो सब आता ही था, तभी फास्ट पेस है, यू नो। Like this fast pace means that you're occupied, your time is occupied, right? As humans, time is just a linear line running parallel to space. Time doesn't have any meaning. Humans want to make meaning out of something, of it to be of relevance, right? So when you're aware of relevance, we don't learn anything. It's when everything slows down, we have time now. We're not able to cut through space. I think that's when we learn, and we learned it. And I think that's what this conversation has been. And I really hope it helps other people struggling through that. And I'm extremely grateful for your time. You have been very generous with it. You have been very generous with your sentiments, with your vulnerability. I had the most amazing conversation. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show.
It was a pleasure.
Now, before you all go, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening in today. I really hope the discussion today helps you in your daily life, in your relationships, and all the different roles you play every day. Thank you so much again for being part of the Blessing and Breaking community. Please follow us and subscribe to us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify. The handle name is Blessing and Breaking. Thank you so much.